Welcome back to another monthly discussion, or discussion video, whatever you want to call it, with my normal guest, Sam.
Hi.
So, I guess the best way to kick it off is talking about, what happened, was it last weekend?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, all the days keep, kind of mesh together after a while, so you lose track, but God, I sounded like I was like 60 years old by then. I mean, saying that, but beside the point. So what did you think of Extreme Rules?
I mean, not overly invested, just, it's okay. I just think that's been WWE lately, just not bad, but nothing spectacular.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, I didn't think that the pay-per-view was that bad. I thought it was a solid pay-per-view. I mean, my main thing is that one of the reasons why I stopped watching the pay-per-views is because I felt like most of WWE's pay-per-views were one-match shows.
Yeah.
And what's the point of watching a 3 to 4 hour event if you're just watching for one match?
Yep. Which, in this case, I would say with Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins.
I agree.
Other than that, nobody. I mean, they were all matches we've seen 100 times. Not that we haven't seen Seth Rollins and
Yeah.
Dolph Ziggler, but it was an Iron Man match, and I mean, they're two of the greatest guys in the business today, so it's a different story. I mean, no offense to Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns, but I'm tired of seeing that.
I mean, well, not to say that the pay-per-view didn't have matches worth watching, but it's that you knew who was going to win. I mean, yes, for most people, I think most people expected Roman Reigns to beat Bobby Lashley, and I, for one, am very happy that they chose to let Lashley win, but that doesn't change the fact that you had AJ and Rusev, where you knew Rusev was going to lose, and it's just like, a lot of the matches, I mean, I guess the best example of it is look at the United States title match. I understand Jeff Hardy's injured, but under a minute? Really? And then you have Randy Orton come out and do the same thing that Nakamura did, kicking Hardy below the belt. It's a very puzzling booking there for the United States title.
I don't know what. I couldn't tell you what they're thinking with that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can tell you what they're thinking. Go ahead.
Or like the women's championship match, the Raw. Booking makes Ronda Rousey suspended, but buys a ticket, but then intervenes, and then does the same thing the next night, but then gets granted a title. Like, how much? It's like clear that they don't know what direction they're going in at this point anymore.
It was a clusterfuck.
All over the place.
It was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not even get into the SmackDown Women's title picture, because I'm not saying Carmella's not a good champion, but what happened to Asuka?
The problem I have I'm a Carmella fan, and but I get you want people to hate her, but they're not, it's not even like they're hating her. I don't know how to word it. Like, people are just tired of her. Because it's the same thing. Over and over.
I mean, I could understand that, and I think that she needs to... I mean, I know Charlotte's injured, but I think she needs to pull a Charlotte or maybe a Becky Lynch and drop the belt and then move out of the title picture. Just for an extended period of time, you know, and otherwise she risks being the women's division Roman Reigns, where people are just tired of seeing him challenge for the title. I mean, tired of seeing her challenge for the title, I mean.
I agree with that.
There is one part that might be, that I feel like we need to talk a little bit about, and that's, the Raw Tag Team title match.
Do we have to talk about that?
It seems like you don't like the, outcome of the title match. Or, what is it, the booking of the titles, or?
I just have I have a problem with them. There's so many, like, well, maybe not on Raw at this point. There's established tag teams on the roster, and then you have Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas, who come out to zero reaction and are now your tag team champions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I can understand that. I mean, at least they have not gone the route of WCW having two people compete in a singles match for the tag titles.
I mean, and I guess it's better than a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Being champion.
Sorry, John Cone. But, I mean, it's just strange. I mean, I guess it's just strange to me because you have all these established tag teams on SmackDown now, including Sanity, which, you know, people might, oh, Sanity's not established. I mean,
they were NXT tag team champions, I mean.
Yeah, at first I would say there was a time when not many people watched NXT, but that was early on in the network. I think as the network grew, so did NXT's audience, and I think more people are aware of Sanity now than they would have been when, say, the Ascension came up.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe it's just the sign of Vince having a micromanaging position on Raw, but not necessarily one on SmackDown.
They're definitely two completely different shows.
Yeah, because you know everybody knows that Vince hates tag teams. Which, look at Raw and you can see Vince hates tag teams.
Clearly.
Now the question is, do you think that the switch was made to have it where Matt and Bray don't take the loss to the authors of pain?
I didn't think of it that way, but that's probably where it's going.
Well, because I'm not sure if Akam or Razor, whoever was having the visa difficulties got it fixed, but assuming they did, how do they fit into the title picture?
You have to imagine that they're next. I mean, I'm trying to think of tag teams on Raw right now. That's pretty sad. I mean, Fandango's injured. So, yeah. They're pretty much the only other established tag team on Raw.
Yeah. I mean,
I would assume sooner or later they're going to get a shot.
I agree. And, I mean, in my opinion, this is why they should have tried to make cruiserweight tag teams to where the cruiserweights could have joined the tag team division to separate them from the division, with the fact that there is only one person who can challenge for the cruiserweight title at a time, and that would allow other cruiserweights to get used as opposed to just sitting on the sidelines getting paid to do nothing.
Never thought of that, but that's a good idea. There's enough cruiserweights.
Yeah. I mean, that's what everybody always said about the women, that they should have a women's tag team titles.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't necessarily need to have a cruiserweight tag team titles, because everybody knows that Vince also hates having too many titles, just as Bruce Pritchard. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I just look at it as, somewhat of a thank you to, or I don't want to say maybe a thank you, but it's sort of like when Curtis Axel won the titles with David Otunga years ago, and Kofi Kingston was winning it with a variety of partners, R-Truth and Evan Bourne. I think.
I miss him.
You can watch him every Thursday night on Pop.
You know what? I'm gonna have on that.
I was gonna say Spike, but they haven't been on Spike in years.
I don't even think I get Pop here.
I was surprised to find out I did, so you never know. I mean, but that also means that I was actually gonna sit down and watch TNA, but sorry, Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, I haven't watched probably since Motor City Machine Guns were around, so that's been years.
I mean, my thing is that I've sat down, I've given them a chance, and I've done it so many times over the years that, I watched them when they were on Destination America for a little bit. I watched them when they were on Pop, when they first started on Pop. But every time they gave me a reason to stop watching. So I'm a little skeptical, even though they are doing a lot better, because I have seen bits and pieces, and I am actually more excited about Slammiversary. I'm not going to watch Slammiversary, because I have no way to watch it, and I'm probably actually going to be working, so I probably won't be able to watch it anyway. But I'm actually more excited about Slammiversary than I was about Extreme Rules.
That's saying something.
Yeah. Because TNA has done an incredible job building some of the matches, and you could tell the extreme difference and the effectiveness of long-term booking. Because TNA with Impact Wrestling with Don Callis and Scott D'Amore, they use the long-term booking philosophy where you have person A feuding with person B, and then person C gets integrated into the feud to make it a smoother transition for when person C and person A start feuding. So then person B can just slot out and slot in with somebody else.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. I don't know why that's not being done in WWE.
Well, I mean, just look at it. You can see that WWE doesn't have doesn't put to use the long-term booking.
No.
Especially with certain divisions, they don't put to use long-term booking. And I'm we could gloss over this, but I'm one of those that believe what, all of those other old school bookers used to say, that you need to know where you're going before you get there. Meaning you need to, go to SummerSlam and then plan backwards. Or go to WrestleMania and then plan backwards. You can't plan as you go to WrestleMania. You need to know where you're going before you get there.
And then you end up where you are right
now. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's a Paul Heyman thing. Kevin Sullivan did it. Eric Bischoff did it. I mean, very early on before he got burnt out. Cornette does it or did it. Like I said, Don Callis and Scott D'Amore. I mean, Scott D'Amore ran a somewhat successful regional territory up in Canada before he joined Impact Wrestling in Border City Wrestling up in.
He's got quite a few people under his.
He trained Maple Leaf Muscle. I mean, when you train Petey Williams, you did something right.
There's saying something.
Yeah, that's saying something.
I like.
mean, I think he also trained Bobby Roode or had a hand in Bobby Roode.
And my boys, the Motor City Machine Guns, I'm pretty sure he had a hand in them too.
I'm pretty sure. You know, and I mean, just think back to Don Callis. I mean, Don Callis was never really known as a wrestler. He was always known as maybe a color commentator or a manager. But I mean, he was somewhat of a superstar on the Canadian independent scene. But you know, I mean, I will say this. You know, Josh Matthews was never that good of an announcer, but having somebody like I hated the show when Sanjay Dutt was his color commentator. Because Sanjay Dutt was actually a color commentator for a time with Josh Matthews. Once Don Callis took over the booth and joined in the booth, it got so much better. Because Don Callis is very reminiscent of Jerry Lawler during Jerry's prime as a heel commentator.
Oh man, those were some good days.
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, is he on par? Do they have like the chemistry that JR and Jerry had? No.
No, I don't think anybody ever will.
I think Don Callis and Kevin Kelly had better chemistry when they commentated the New Japan shows, but that's just me. But I think Josh Matthews is a lot better with having Don Callis like a legitimate commentator, and where Josh is actually trying to be a commentator and not put himself over like he was when he first got there, or like he was, when he's the only serious commentator at a WWE announce table. You got a problem. But yeah, I mean, I agree. That's when you have Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler in commentary, it made the show better, because when you have commentators who actually care and are trying to put the product over, it makes you get interested. It makes it easier for you to get interested in the product.
It's funny you say that, because I was just watching 2008, 2009 era Divas matches.
Mm-hmm.
Not even talking about the women whatsoever. Like, they're completely talking about other things. And that was 10 years ago. Like, it's funny to see how far it's come.
Yeah, I mean, just the influence that outside circumstances have had on how WWE perceives the women as far as booking is concerned. The FIFA women's soccer team, and Ronda Rousey in the UFC, but also I think Triple H's booking of women down in NXT helped change the perception. Because then the question started getting asked, why do the women down in developmental get booked better than the women on the main roster? Yeah. And I mean, I agree. I mean, 2008, that was Jim Ross moving over to SmackDown. That was the start of the revolving door of announcers on SmackDown. And that's also when the ECW broadcast team was the best announced team in WWE. With Matt Stryker and I think it was Matt Stryker and a mixture of Todd Grisham and Josh Matthews, I think.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah. Because I think Todd ended up on SmackDown after ECW. I remember World Champions. I don't remember who was broadcasting when.
I mean, considering that's the job I'm trying to get, you would think that I'm sorry, I'm subpar on my commentator.
Well, what, 2008, so that was Cole and Lawler. Cole just moved over to Raw. At first it was Jim Ross and Taz, then Jim Ross and Mick Foley. Then, yeah. No. No, I think that's before JBL joined the broadcast position. No, I think JBL retired in 2009. Or... Yeah, because JBL was feuding with Jericho after Jericho came back in 07. Because Jericho first came back as a babyface, and then he turned heel and had the feud with Michaels in 08. God, I'm like an encyclopedia. But I mean, this is actually, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video or in this discussion, that how much wrestling has changed. Not just like, I'm not going to go back to the usual, it's changed a lot since the territories. Of course it has. No, I mean, like, just in like the last 5 to 10 years, how much wrestling has changed. Even with the booking of WWE talent, like, back 10 years ago when, 2008? Before Daniel Bryan even got into WWE, when he was still Bryan Danielson with Ring of Honor, before Joe, before AJ, before all those guys, when the term, he's never going to make it in WWE, still existed, you had the picture of certain people building the Ring of Honor brand. You had the picture of certain people building Impact Wrestling and helping forge that identity for the company, and you never expected them to be in WWE. Just in that case, wrestling has changed tremendously, just how WWE perceives top talent.
Oh, definitely. Like, CM Punk, I don't think anybody ever thought he would have made it in WWE. I know that's probably a name we shouldn't discuss, but...
Well, as long as we're talking about him positively, I don't think he'll care.
You can't, despite everything that happened, you can't take away what he did for the company.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, especially if we're going back in the time frame, 10 years ago, that's when he was, I think that's when he was first starting the Straight Edge Society. Like the tail end of 2008, early 2009 was when he was starting the Straight Edge Society.
Yeah, that was when he started to get
a little creepy.
Well, I mean, he debuted, 2005? He was ECW for a while.
Yeah, and then he moved over to Raw when he won the world title because of Money in the Bank.
Yeah. That was like 08, maybe? Yeah?
Possibly. It possibly was. Well, Cena returned in 08, and he was the top feud with Randy and Hunter. So that means Punk probably got drafted to SmackDown. So I know 2009 was Punk's feud with Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
So he must have gotten drafted to SmackDown in 2009. So he probably, which would make sense because I think he won Money in the Bank. No, he won back-to-back Money in the Banks, right? Yeah, I think he. Or was it Kennedy that won in between?
I don't remember what I did yesterday.
But yeah, I mean, I agree that, you can't stunt what Punk meant to the company. Because he was the guy for a time. Even if the company didn't want to admit it, he was the guy for a time. He was the most popular guy in the company for a time. As WWE always says, the merchandise sales point to that because he was outselling John Cena.
And with all that, blame him for walking away. Well, I mean, maybe we shouldn't get into that.
Well, maybe you're right.
I think there's always better ways to handle things, but he had a point.
Oh yeah, he definitely had a point. Yeah. Absolutely, he definitely had a point. So you were right, actually, that Punk did win his first Money in the Bank in 2008. The one I was thinking of was won by Kennedy in 2007. But Punk won 2008, 2009. So you were right. The run you were talking about was more than I think his run on Raw was 2007, but I think he was a popular champion in 2008 because I think he got moved over to SmackDown in 2008, and that's when he had his feud with The Undertaker. You know, that infamous Hell in a Cell match, and the screw job with Teddy Long, and, you know, Taker abducting Teddy Long, and God, I remember way too much about what I've seen in the past. Oh, man.
Memories.
Yeah. I want to call them good memories, but okay. Well, I mean, just think back to 8 years ago, even, where 2010, 2009, 2010, that wasn't really good. That wasn't a really good, that was not a really good time period for wrestling in general in the United States, looking at both Impact Wrestling and WWE. I mean, they had I'll even mention, 2011 too into that, that 3-year period, 2008 to 2011, it wasn't really that good for WWE. They had a lot of hot angles, especially in 2010 and 2011, and they blew it up. Both of them flopped. The Nexus and CM Punk both flopped. Would you agree that it was a tough time to be a wrestling fan?
Yeah. And definitely being a female wrestling fan, that was, I feel like that was the height of the 2-minute diva matches.
Mm-hmm.
This Kelly's, and listen, no offense to Kelly, but let's be real, she wasn't a good wrestler. That was the Kelly's, and that was just,
yeah.
The woman is a female wrestling fan. It's already hard enough getting, taken seriously being you're not a wrestling fan, and then having to, these are the girls I have to look up to. It was really the height of, the models being wrestlers.
Yeah, and I mean, I will admit that, Kelly was not that good, but she did get better by the end of her run. And, looking at other women in the division at that time, some of them, Jillian Hall, I'll even point to Gail Kim, because even though Gail Kim is a Hall of Famer in TNA, she never got the opportunity to show that.
Her run in WWE, both of them were bad.
Yeah, she never got to show what she could actually do in the company, to where it makes her seem like she's not that good.
Yeah, and again, that was because they were more focused at that time on,
mediocre tag team matches.
Pretty girls.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if you know the story, but I listened to a Bruce Pritchard podcast of, you probably remember when Kelly first debuted on ECW. Do you want to take a guess on who taught Kelly how to dance?
I'm not sure I want to know.
Vince.
Okay, so a 60-year-old white man teaching a 19-year-old
Uh-huh.
man? Okay.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense.
As Bruce Pritchard told it, he said, he was up on his chair in his office and telling her, "You gotta shake it. You gotta look at that camera. You gotta make it yours. You gotta make it yours. This is how you gotta make it yours. You gotta move." And I just can't imagine Vince dancing and teaching Kelly how to dance.
That's not a visual like in my head.
Sorry. Just think about bald Baron Corbin. Or, well, fully bald Baron Corbin, because he was half bald before. I don't know why they made him shave his head if he's a constable now, but, you know, if you want to try and figure out WWE. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and then you look at now, I mean, you have people you never thought you'd see in the company, especially, I mean, look at AJ Styles. He has held the title longer than some legends who spent their entire careers with WWE, and I know Mick Foley would say, "Oh, it doesn't matter what you did, how long you hold it, it matters what you did with it." You know, 'cause, I mean, that's just Mick's way of saying, "Oh, I held the title 3 times and I only held it for about a month."
But I meant something to it, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think anybody ever thought that AJ Styles would have like I think it's probably closing in on like a 260-day reign or 260-plus day reign with the WWE title.
Never. I don't. You're lying if you said you saw that coming.
Man, I agree, and you know the funny thing is that Vince has now gone on record saying he regrets not signing AJ sooner. Yeah. Well, now, as I mentioned before we started recording, there's one thing that has been consistent with our recordings in recent months, or recent weeks, or whatever you want to, whatever time period you want to go through. Summerslam. Post Extreme Rules, has your interest level in SummerSlam gotten any higher, or are you in any way, shape, or form looking forward to any particular match you expect to see at SummerSlam?
No, because it's probably going to be the same matches we've seen.
I will say that... Go ahead.
Well, the 2 people fighting to become the number 1 contender for the Universal title, Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns. We've seen Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar 900 times. Nobody wants to see that.
Preach.
I mean, I guess I have nothing against Bobby Lashley. Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, again, I'm a huge Finn Balor fan. The guy's never going to win the Universal title again at this point. No, they don't know what they're doing. I mean, Kevin Owens, there's guys that should be ahead of Bobby Lashley.
There's a rumor going around that they're going to have Hulk Hogan crown the first WWE, the first black WWE champion. Or, in specific, the first black WWE Universal champion, because even though people don't like to say it, The Rock was the first WWE champion who was African American because he is half black.
Okay, so Hulk Hogan's a racist, there's no doubt about that. There's no way around that. But
it's a touchy subject, but are you okay with him being back?
I mean...
Well, let me rephrase that. Are you okay with him being reinstated into the Hall of Fame? Whether he's back with the company or not, are you okay with him being reinstated into the Hall of Fame?
Yes, and if you read the New Day or Titus O'Neil's post on Twitter, they're basically saying, look, you can't take away what he's done for this company. Whatever he set aside, the Hall of Fame, they're like, it changes nothing. I mean, then you can get into, domestic abusers in the Hall. I mean, there's people who have done physically worse things.
Jimmy Snuka's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
There's people who have done worse.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean...
Not that I'm excusing Hulk Hogan's behavior, because there's no excuse for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know Jimmy Snuka was never proven guilty, but I think the only reason why he wasn't found guilty in the retrial is because of the fact that he had the mental disease. I mean, Alzheimer's or...
Yeah, his health was shot at that point.
Yeah. So, I think that's the only reason why he wasn't found guilty.
I think most people know that he's guilty.
Because, I mean, not to bring it up, but, like, to prove my point, Bill Cosby is a perfect example of the courts not showing age discrimination or feeling bad about sentencing somebody because of their age.
Yeah. Or, I am a huge Stone Cold fan. I love him. Best friend is his biggest fan, but we all know he's had issues.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to take him out because he's convicted of abuse? You know, then it becomes a slippery slope. Well, who gets to decide what makes it okay? You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably the greatest superstar of the Attitude Era. You're going to take him out because he has these things? Like,
well, I mean, it's like you look at, the Baseball Hall of Fame where they have the character clause in the Baseball Hall of Fame where if you do certain things, you're not allowed to be in the Hall of Fame. But the question is, would you take somebody out if they did something like that? Yeah. In the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's, I guess, the also difference between WWE's Hall of Fame and the Baseball Hall of Fame, where the Baseball Hall of Fame has Cooperstown. The WWE doesn't have a physical Hall of Fame and could technically... remove.
Then there's that whole thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, yeah.
Well, then there's the whole thing of does, and I don't take anything away from anybody who's in the Hall of Fame, but does the Hall of Fame even mean anything when you have people like Mike Tyson?
I mean, I think that I agree with the concept of you need a physical building for it to actually have any meaning. But I think it's also just that one night a year where you honor the past. And I think that's enough to give it somewhat meaning because it means something to those who get inducted because it means that, they're remembered, I guess.
But judging by, some of the people that they put in it, Donald Trump, come
on. In terms of the celebrity wing, I don't think
that should be a thing.
Well, I can understand, if you want to put, Cyndi Lauper in the Hall of Fame. Because of her role in WrestleMania 1.
Yeah,
and
she actually had...
her impact in the company.
Yes.
Because she helped the Rock and Wrestling era. She basically paved the way with Captain Lou on the Rock and Wrestling era. But she should be in the Hall of Fame. It's like, you have... don't get me wrong. The only reason why Donald Trump's in the Hall of Fame is because of the mainstream attention that it got when they put him in.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine the type of thing that they're going to have when The Rock finally goes into the Hall of Fame. I think that they just want to let The Rock get all the possible matches that he wants to get out of it, so he's not competing as a Hall of Famer. He's retired when he gets inducted. But you also want him to be where he's getting inducted for his wrestling accomplishments and not making it seem like you're inducting a celebrity.
Exactly.
In that case, who do you think is the top name next year? Do you think Taker's the top name next year, or do you think it goes to Dwayne?
Do I think it goes... that's tough. There's still rumors that The Undertaker is going to make appearances.
I hope he's not going to keep wrestling. Because just the fact that he went, 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever the length he went with Cena at WrestleMania, that shows that he can't work anymore.
No.
You know,
man, I don't know who else it could be. There was this long talking about somebody who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, Owen Hart. His wife, his widow, is unfortunately never going to allow that, which is a shame.
Well, that's why I always said that the Hart Foundation should go in. Because then you can get Owen in, because you're not inducting Owen, you're inducting the group.
Yeah, but I don't know if she would still have to agree to that.
I mean, but then you'd also have, Brian Pillman going in, you'd have Jim Neidhart going in, you'd have Bret Hart getting a second induction, which I think Bret Hart would like to stroke his ego getting a second induction. Davey Boy would finally go in. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that it would be tough for them to induct Stables because they've never gone that route.
Well, the Four Horsemen.
Well, yeah, true. True, I forgot about them.
How could you forget about them?
I blame it on Oli. I mean, if I had to guess, you can make early guesses for the Hall of Fame. I would like to see China get the posthumous inductee or posthumous induction. Mick Foley has been begging for them to get China a posthumous induction.
That's gonna happen.
I mean, with the fact that they actually mentioned her when she died, I would like it, but I think Vader might be more likely to get the posthumous induction.
Isn't he already
in? I'm not sure.
I don't even know anymore. Well, see, China, there goes to it. What China did wasn't illegal. You might not agree with it. What makes her different than Hulk Hogan?
True. I mean,
you're getting down a slippery slope when you start taking people out because, like I said, who gets to judge what's classified as decent behavior or Hall of Fame worthy behavior? If you were to do that, the majority of them wouldn't be in it.
Well, yeah, because then you have drug abusers who are in it. Look no further than Superstar Billy Graham. Yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. Superstar Billy Graham was an amazing character during his prime, but are you honoring him? Or are you honoring his actions? And then you make a case. Oh, Chris Benoit's not in, but Jimmy Snuka is, just because Jimmy Snuka was never convicted.
Yeah. Again, it's when you start deciding who gets to be in and who doesn't because of what. That's a rough slope.
I have an idea. Induct the Wild Pegasus. Don't induct Chris Benoit. If you say, "Oh, that's Chris Benoit," no, it's not. It's the Wild Pegasus.
All right, now you're just getting into semantics.
I know, but at least Benoit would get. At least the Wild Pegasus would be able to get in. I mean, they induct.
I feel like Chris Benoit is a whole other story.
Well, yeah, because he was obviously convicted of what happened because there was no, sign of forced entry. There was no, he obviously did it.
Yeah.
But it's also obvious that Snuka did it, but only got off because of technicalities. But it's I mean, next year's. I said I think I remember saying that the next year that they go to New York, they should look at ECW guys and get some ECW guys in there. Much like they did the last time when Bob Backlund and Mick Foley got in. And I think that was the year Bruno got in too. Which I'm happy that Bruno got in before he passed. But, you gotta look at it like Paul Heyman deserves to go in.
Oh, definitely. But he's another one that they may wait
I mean, in my opinion, you want to induct guys like Hillbilly Jim. Not saying Hillbilly Jim doesn't deserve to get in, but in my opinion, Hillbilly Jim should have been in already. Coco Beware doesn't deserve to be in. Or didn't deserve to be in already. Hillbilly Jim deserved to be in before Coco Beware, but I'm also the one that thinks Demolition should be in. I understand that they're not in because of the lawsuit. Because both Barry Darsow and Billy Eadie are in the lawsuit, the concussion lawsuit. So they're not going in anytime soon. But, you know, then you start going in and pulling a Jim Cornette. But then the question is, why would you induct Jim Cornette in the tri-state area? Why not wait until you have WrestleMania back down south? You know, and, you know, then they get, you know, other characters, maybe a Kamala, or, you know, because you look at it and say Abdullah the Butcher's in it, but Kamala's not. Kamala actually worked in the WWE. Davey Boy Smith isn't in it. Earthquake isn't in it.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people that should have been in before. Like, Beth Phoenix. China paved the way for Beth Phoenix.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I was the one. I remember being on podcasts leading into, well, over the last 2 years. I remember being on podcasts. I think specifically before, not this year's WrestleMania, but last year's, where I was saying names like, you know, Judy Martin and Lalani Kai, or you know, Luna, even.
Oh, yep.
You know, those names that fit the mold with Ivory and Jacqueline that were before
them.
Before, you know, Lita and Trish and all those other names.
No, and not to say, I mean, Trish and Lita obviously deserve to be.
Well, isn't right. Trish in the Hall of Fame, but Lita isn't?
No, they both are now.
Oh, they both are?
Yeah. Lita went after Trish. But it goes to, yeah, why did it take so long for Wendy Richter to be in it? Well, you know, why aren't we honoring the people that paved the way for the Trish Stratuses and the Litas?
Well, yeah. Well, the fair reason is because nobody's ever heard of them. Nobody knows what they did in the, what they did to earn their stripes in the wrestling, in that aspect. I mean, I can understand.
I mean, I didn't watch Wendy Richter, but I knew all about her.
I mean, I can understand you're grasping at straws when you say the Rockin' Robin deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but...
Well, I mean,
and if anybody who's watching doesn't know who the Rockin' Robin is, Jake Roberts' sister for one, she's Jake Roberts' sister for one, and yes, that was actually her name. But, I mean, well, you know, one thing that, you know, wrestling fans always have fun with is very early predictions. And I think you know where I'm going with this.
No.
Oh.
Well, WrestleMania?
Well, I was going to say Hall of Fame, but...
Oh. Even though, I'd have to go with The Undertaker.
Mm.
I'd like to say Chris Jericho, but I think he's still got more time.
Yeah, and I think they could use him as a lead seller, I guess.
Oh, he would be the top, yeah.
Yeah, top draw. That's the word. Top draw.
He would definitely be the top.
Any other names you think could go in next year?
We know it's gonna be. We know that they do at least one female.
Mm-hmm.
I highly doubt, unfortunately, at this time it's gonna be China. I would like Luna.
Yeah, I would like that too.
I think her family's on pretty good.
Oh yeah, the Pachans love or still friendly with WWE.
Obviously, when they're deceased, the family has to accept it.
Now, would you have a second posthumous inductee, or would you just let Luna be the only posthumous inductee? Because that's the other problem with China. Would you have a second posthumous induction, or would you only let China be the posthumous induction?
I would when it's somebody like China, I think she deserves it on her own.
Well,
it's tough because I feel like there's already so many people in. Like, who else? There are a lot of guys and girls that are Hall of Fame worthy, but I think it's too early. I mean, The Rock, Jericho. It's still too early for them.
Well,
at this point.
You think Christian should go in, or do you think it's still too early for him to go in, and it's still too fresh in everybody's mind with him being an active wrestler?
I'm actually really surprised that he's not in there.
Well, with his relationship with Vince and how highly Vince used to think of him, I'm not surprised. But, I mean, I think it may be more likely that China goes in with D-Generation X, because that's what I was thinking, that maybe DX goes in before Triple H takes over ownership. Which
incarnation?
I'd induct everybody. I'd induct Shawn, the Outlaws, X-Pac, China, Triple H.
Do you think that's the only way that X-Pac gets in?
In my opinion, I think he should be a double inductee, but I think that WWE may not agree. But I think it would be hard to disagree with that, because even if you're not going to induct him with the NWO, which I wouldn't induct him with the NWO, even though he was member 4 or member number 5, I still wouldn't induct him, because you want to induct Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and that's it. You know, you don't want Scott Norton jumping in or Buff Bagwell jumping in and having them get inducted too, because of their association with the NWO. I mean, to be honest, I would also include Rick Rude in the DX induction, because he was a part of the Rick,
we're just really bad at this. Is Rick Rude already in?
Yeah, I think didn't he get inducted last year?
I think he's in. Yes, very recently.
Yeah, I remember. I can tell you who was the world champion 20 years ago, but I can't tell you who got inducted last year. I can barely remember who got inducted this year, to be honest.
China, Rude, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels were DX.
No. The only iffy part of it is, though, that Rick Rude was only there for about a month or two before he left for WCW because of the screw job. So I don't know, or maybe a little bit longer. I'm not really too sure, because that was a very weird time with him working for ECW, WWF, and WCW basically all at once.
On the same day?
Well, yeah. That was, I think, closer to the screw job when he worked with WCW and WWE the same day.
That was right after he quit.
Yeah. But, I mean, you're right. I think just based on the fact that he was there at the beginning is reason enough for him to get inducted. But it's just the idea that I don't know if the company... Like, right now, Ric Flair is the only 2-time inductee.
Do they want to take that away from Ric Flair? Yeah.
I think other people do deserve it. Shawn Michaels more than deserves it. I mean, I said in podcasts years ago. I said in a podcast a few years ago that Mr. Fuji deserves to be a 2-time inductee, just based on the amount of years he gave to the company.
Yep, I wouldn't argue with that.
And the legacy that he had, because he basically went from an active wrestler with the company to a manager, and he stayed with the company for about 35 years. I mean, the same could be said for Chief J. Strongbow, but you're sure as hell not going to induct Chief J. Strongbow twice.
No.
You know, unless you induct him in his him and Jules, but I mean, if they were really brothers, I could understand, but then you look at, actual brothers, Terry and Dory. Terry's not inducted by himself. Terry's is not a sole inductee, is not in the Hall of Fame on his own. He's in the Hall of Fame with Dory. I think Terry Funk should be in the Hall of Fame by himself. Not to discount Dory Funk. That's the only way Dory Funk gets in. But Terry Funk has done enough, in particular with WWE also that he should get a sole inducted on his own. Because if Mick Foley wants to induct anybody, he can induct Terry Funk in a heartbeat. Same with Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer could be up there inducting Terry Funk, and I also think Tommy Dreamer should be a Hall of Famer.
Oh, there's a name.
There's one! I mean, I'm not sure if Tommy could get in next year, but, the tri-state area is the best place to induct him.
Oh, yeah. Or if WWE, WrestleMania is in Philly.
Yeah, that's true. It'd
be a nice year for BCW.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Tommy can have a party at, the ECW arena. The dingy arena down in Swanson and Rittner. I mean, I think together we made up a Hall of Fame class, but I mean, I guess the one other thing I would have to ask is about the Hall of Fame before we, shift gears. Do you like the idea of them inducting an international talent, and do you think that they should go back to inducting more international talent? Because I think they've gotten away from it the last couple of years. With the Legacy Award taking, center stage, more of a focused, and the Warrior Award taking more focused, that they maybe shrunk down the class, I guess, in a way, to where maybe the international guy isn't there anymore, and the Warrior Award takes his spot. But do you like the fact that they were inducting guys like Tatsumi Fujinami and, I know they inducted Inoki a few years ago, but, do you think that they should keep doing that?
I mean, it didn't really, make a difference to me. I sometimes think, you don't want the class to be too big and too...
You're right.
Overwhelming.
You're right.
With talent. You want that one... Because there's usually that one person that, this year... Or it's Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels got in. I don't know. There are a lot of talent here that still haven't gotten in yet.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that maybe the Dudleys got in too soon, and they should have maybe held it off for this year, as opposed to doing it next year. I mean, this past year. They should have held it off till next year.
I agree with that, but there may not have been... I mean, what other tag team? We missed that. What other tag team? I mean, the Hardy Boys, obviously, but it's still too early for that.
I agree.
What other tag team is going to go in?
I mean, I would say Edge and Christian, but I don't think they want Edge going in as a 2-time induction yet.
No, I don't think.
I mean, I wish Demolition did not have this wasn't a part of the stupid lawsuit. I mean, to pull Jim Cornette, and I know I said this before, but Midnight Express. You induct Ricky and Robert 2 years ago. You induct Ricky and Robert 2 years ago, and the Fabulous Freebirds 3 years ago, or whatever it was. I think it was 2 years ago and 3 years ago. But why not the Midnight Express? I mean, Corny obviously has a better relationship now than he did, even 3 years ago at WWE or 4 years ago at WWE, after being the guy who inducts rock and roll. So, I mean, the Midnight Express could go in. They more than deserve it.
Yeah.
But then it's also the question of, should they go in up in the tri-state, or should we wait until they have another WrestleMania down south? A rumor that just popped into my head that was centered around before WrestleMania season in the Hall of Fame was that originally, now I want to check who went in last year. Originally, the posthumous inductee wasn't supposed to go to the person it did this year, and it was supposed to go to Bam Bam Bigelow. But they decided to hold off on Bam Bam till next year. Because it's going to be in the tri-state area, and it's going to be where they have it, where it's in his hometown. Home area, rather. They didn't have a posthumous induction this past year. The Hall of Fame was Kid Rock, the Dudleys, Mark Henry, Hillbilly Jim, Jeff Jarrett, Ivory, and Goldberg. They didn't have a posthumous induction this year. Do you think that Bam Bam should have been? Well, for one, do you think Bam Bam Bigelow had a Hall of Fame career enough to warrant an induction?
Truthfully, no, but you could argue that there's quite a few people in that probably didn't have a Hall of Fame worthy career either.
Do you think factoring in his ECW run that maybe that warrants that opens, maybe adds a little bit more credit to his career?
Oh, yes. I don't want to say nobody deserves, I don't want to say anybody doesn't deserve to be in it.
Yeah.
I just think there's people ahead of him who should probably be in it before him.
Especially if he's going to be the posthumous induction.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Again,
China should have been in 5 years ago.
If I had to guess, I think either Hillbilly Jim or Mark Henry were replaced. Bam Bam. I do think Bam Bam should have went in this year because I think it was too soon for Mark Henry.
Yeah, Mark Henry. I don't even think Mark Henry officially retired.
I don't know.
I don't remember any.
I haven't followed Mark Henry's career in. Yeah. I haven't followed Mark Henry's. I think we actually talked about this, though, that, how WWE books veterans, it's hard to care about, Mark Henry and, Kane and guys like that because they don't book them strong enough for where you should.
Kane should have stopped 10 years ago. Kane going in the Hall of Fame regardless, but
I think Kane could be a top draw for the Hall of Fame when he actually does finally hang it up, especially if he becomes mayor.
I think, but let's be real, Kane's going in the Hall of Fame for the first 10 years of his career, not the last 10.
You're not wrong because you get puzzled by if Daniel did not get injured when he and Kane had that feud, would they have actually had Kane and Daniel have that heated feud that they should have when Kane injured him? Or would they have not because it was Kane? Because they never actually let Kane have that heat like they did with Mark Henry. When Mark Henry had the Hall of Pain, you had him have a serious badass run where he was the top heel, no nonsense, no bullshit, no, comedy acts or no, lame segments. You saw it in, what was it? I think 2011 when he had that feud with The Undertaker, but nobody took him seriously.
No.
Or 2000, whenever it was. 2010, 2011, whenever it was. Nobody took him seriously. That was the problem, that, you had him as this big, no-nonsense heel because of what he did to The Undertaker, but his promos were so over the top, you couldn't take him seriously. Speaking of that, what did you think of Team Hell No versus the Bludgeon Brothers and the outcome of that match?
I don't understand the point, because why else? What other reason do Kane and Daniel Bryan have to team up together unless they were going to win the tag titles?
I mean, if Kane is legitimately injured, I can sort of understand why they didn't win. But other than that, I can't understand it. But it's also like, I think somebody from What Culture Wrestling said, Kane's injured, Kane has a walking boot, why did Daniel take the fall?
Yeah.
Why didn't Kane take the fall? It's questionable, but I don't think there is any move that WWE hasn't made in recent months, especially, that isn't questionable. But now, as we wrap it up, SummerSlam is August 19th, which is actually a month from today. Well, a month from today's date. It's not a month from today because, today's Thursday and it's not on a Thursday. But, the point is, SummerSlam is a month from today, What match, I'm not gonna ask for a prediction, what match do you hope you see and what match do you hope you don't see at SummerSlam?
Well, I hope I don't see Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns.
That's fair. I think everybody would agree with that.
Going back to Finn Balor, I would like to see Finn challenge for the Intercontinental Championship against Dolph Ziggler. I think the two of them would put on
one hell of a match, yeah.
Pretty damn decent show.
I agree, and especially if they want to move Seth out of the tag. Even if they do Seth, Dolph, and Finn, I would like to see that too.
Oh yeah. And there's rumors that Seth is supposed to be moving out of that, but...
Well, I could see that only because I think even the company realizes that Brock is likely leaving. Which I would not be against I would not be against at all. Because, I would agree that I don't want to see Roman and Brock, and I don't think we will. I'm, maybe being overly optimistic. But the match that I want to see would be AJ against Samoa Joe for the WWE title, just because of the surreal nature of the match and the fact that AJ Styles is fighting Samoa Joe for the WWE title. And the actual prospect of Samoa Joe possibly even winning.
Yeah, that would be pretty fantastic.
Because, I mean, seeing AJ Styles win the WWE title is one thing, but seeing Samoa Joe hold the WWE title by beating AJ Styles...
Oh, yeah.
Whole different story.
Speaking of two guys who you never thought would be in the WWE.
Yeah. Exactly. But the one reason why I think Brock leaving is good is because he's holding the Universal title hostage and preventing, yes, they might be using Brock's, or they might have been using Brock's time away to turn him heel and make it where everybody's cheering him, booing him and cheering the other guy. But his time away is also hurting the Universal title.
Oh, it is. It means absolutely nothing.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's helping the Intercontinental title, because the Intercontinental title in turn is becoming the most important title on Raw. But
and the guys who are holding it, of course, deserve it, but that's not the main title.
Exactly, and the title isn't supposed to make the person... the person isn't supposed to make the title is supposed to help elevate the person.
Yeah, okay, Brock held the title for 400 whatever days. A long title reign doesn't mean anything when you don't defend it. When
Dean Ambrose.
He's a placeholder. Look back at it in 10 years, and you're not going to remember Brock Lesnar's reign.
Oh, because it's not helping the title, and if anything, it's limiting the people who could win the title with the fan interest at a high. And yes, the fans will be interested if Finn Balor wins the title. The fans will be interested if all these guys win the title. But the difference between Brock's reign and Jinder Mahal's reign, for example, is the people were interested. Otherwise, Jinder wouldn't be getting any reaction. By the end, they were ecstatic to see him drop the title, don't get me wrong, but that's the difference. Jinder was there every week. And it's also the difference between the WWE title and the Universal title. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you wouldn't do that to the WWE title, why are you doing that to the Universal?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't understand why.
And it will open the door for guys like Finn Balor and Braun Strowman and Kevin Owens and Jinder to get into the main event with Brock gone, because the spotlight will expand ever so slightly to include more people with Brock out of the picture.
No, you're 100% right.
And just look at UFC 226 with his interaction with Daniel Cormier. And whether it was a work or whether it was a shoot, it doesn't matter. What matters is Brock's going back to the UFC. Because he did re-enter the USADA drug testing pool.
To get drug tested.
He re-entered the pool, I think, either the week after or the week before UFC 226, which lines up with New Year's Eve or New Year's Day for him to be able to fight for the return to the octagon for the first time. So that basically means that within the next couple of months, either SummerSlam or soon after, Brock Lesnar will finally be gone from the WWE. I don't think anybody thought that Brock would have a 6-year run with the company, but after 6 years, he has nobody left to fight. Unless you want to redo matches that he did and erase bad matches like he had with Braun Strowman, that's the only way you can redo it. But the fact of the matter is, you can't put Brock over if he did redo the match. Brock would have to lose. That's the thing. You need to start putting Braun against people like a Roman Reigns, where he can legitimately stand a chance to lose, because even though I think Braun more than deserves to be Universal Champion, he is getting to the point where he needs to start losing.
I 100% agree.
Because otherwise it's going to be just like Roman Reigns, where he's not... yes, Braun Strowman, different than Roman. But you still need to get to the point where you humanize the people. Because otherwise, that's why people invest in Daniel Bryan. That's why people invest in Finn Balor, because they're like them. They're like the common folk. They're like the common people, where they're easy to invest in. Braun Strowman is not easy to invest in. You don't invest in Braun Strowman because you're a 6'11", 300+ pound guy. You invest in Braun Strowman because of what he does. You invest in Daniel Bryan because it looks like you.
Yep.
And I don't know how many people are sitting there saying, "Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about," or "This girl knows what she's talking about," and they should write for WWE. Well, when WWE comes knocking, maybe I'll answer it, but I don't think they would. I don't think they're having an open invitation for marks. Let's put it that way.
Hey, I've looked into their writing position. It's very difficult to get into.
Yeah. I think it would be easier to move to Canada and go join Impact Wrestling. So, Anthem, if anybody from your company is listening, we'd both be very interested. I'm, not to be speaking for Sam, but I'm sure she'd be interested in going over and working for...
Oh, I'm down for that.
Impact. Or, Kerry Silkin, if you're... well, actually, I take that back. Kerry Silkin, even if you're listening, stop listening. But yeah, Impact Wrestling, if you're listening, Don Callis, Scott D'Amore, if you guys are listening, we're more than interested in coming up and helping any way we could help TNA, Impact Wrestling, whatever. I'll just say this, before we wrap it up, that for 15 years we called that company Impact Wrestling. I mean TNA. It's very difficult not to call them TNA. And I do like the fact that they changed the name because the initials TNA, not a good name for a wrestling company.
No.
I'll even throw this story out that when I redid my room like 7 years ago, or probably 5 years ago at this point, my mom gave me a shelf and she wrote all WWE, UFC, ROH. She misspelled TNA. She said TNN, and I'm like, Mom, that's the cable company. That's the TV channel. And she's like, what is it? TNA? Oh. Yeah. It's fine. At that point I wasn't really a fan of TNA, so maybe I could be a supporter of the Nashville network that really isn't, a network anymore, but, the Paramount network, Well, with that story out of the way, I thank Sam for once again coming on and sitting down and talking, shooting the breeze about wrestling for a bit.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And for you, the viewer, or the listener, or however you're somehow hearing this, let us know down in the comment section what your thoughts are on everything we spoke about in this video, because by the time that I publish this video, I'm probably not going to remember what we talked about, but that's beside the point. Either way, let us know down in the comment section below your thoughts on anything we discussed. And if anybody from Impact Wrestling wants to contact us, our information is in the description for Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. For both of us, all down in the description. But if you don't want to leave a comment, you can always leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this that you can only find right here at Wrestling Express. And before you go, do not forget to ding on that notification bell to always know when a new video comes up on the channel. Later.